Why did the pony drink all the water?
Why?
He was a little horse.
Hungry Squared, bringing you the best food talk anywhere.
Welcome to the Hungry Squared podcast where the brain and belly meet. I'm Sharon from the Wasatch Cooking Guide.
And I'm Winter from Chef vs. Baker. And this week we're talking about blood and guts. Blood and guts.
Let's talk about Chef versus Baker for a minute.
Oh, wait. We got to finish the intro.
All right.
Let's talk
Stay
about
tuned.
it. Hey, Sharon.
Chef versus Baker, Winter. You're throwing me for a loop.
I'm sorry. It's been a little bit of time coming. Lee and I are moving away from Red Party, and we're going to start a new food blog starting November 1st.
A new party.
So we did it just because Lee is the chef in our family. He's the cook in our family. Mm-hmm. And I'm the baker in the family. And we talk about that, how there's a very big difference.
Huge. Ike and I talk about it all the time.
It's just a different way of making food, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Very different attitudes. And so we thought it would be fun he can document some of the stuff he makes that is savory. I like to cook as well. And he likes to bake on occasion, one or two things.
Ike hates baking, hates it.
So it's going to be just a collection of recipes that are savory versus sweet. We're probably going to focus a little bit on the Instant Pot right now. And then I wanted to put down dessert recipes that were, I don't know how to put it, but they're things that you would take to a party because they're like, ooh, I want this recipe. It's one of those ones.
Potluck popular favorite.
So that's what we're doing with Chef versus Baker. If you have any fun things that you need us to do. I've noticed that there's a lot of people that still love their crock pot. Love their crock pot. So we're going to do some more crock pot stuff too.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's what that's all about. How's your week been?
It's been pretty good.
Yeah?
It's been fun-filled. I've had 2 Halloween parties this week.
Oh, snap. This is coming out the week of Halloween, so I hope everybody's had their fill.
Yeah.
Or will have their fill this week.
If not, you're going to get your fill of blood and guts today.
Dun, dun, dun. I'm excited.
Yeah. First, we got to do a food nerd shout out.
This week, Sharon, I actually chatted with my friend, Jamie. Hey, Jamie.
Hey.
And I'll probably say hi to Bonnie, too, because she's probably listening to this. This is her daughter. She loves hearing her name on the...
Hi, Bonnie.
Hi, Bonnie and James. Anyway, she was like, we need to see this hot dog eating contest between Ike and Lee. She was encouraging it.
Yes, we do. I think that's a brilliant idea.
I think it's a brilliant idea too, but I haven't been able to convince Lee necessarily.
Why not?
Well, we got to find a time if this is going to work out.
Sure. I think Ike would be all over it if no buns were incled.
Yeah, but didn't we talk about...
That's part of the
what was it called? The picnic style or whatever? Mm-hmm. Maybe it was Lee that was telling me where they have hot dog eating contests where you cannot dip the bun in water. You have to eat it picnic style. Just
right.
You have the hot dog in the bun and you eat it that way.
Yeah. Well, I think that would cut down on your hot dog consumption for sure.
But who's going to be dipping the hot dog bun?
No, I already know Ike would not.
Lee wouldn't either, I don't think.
I know that he doesn't love hot dog buns. If he's just having at the cookout a hot dog, then he'll eat the bun.
But didn't he say that he was going to eat 15 of them?
Right, but that would be bunless.
Really?
Yes.
Well, then I can eat 15 hot dogs.
What? No. That's me. I'm good for 5 if it's a contest.
Of hot dogs?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, wait, we got to...
Winter's in on this contest now, and I will be judging.
No. If it's just straight hot dogs, I think I could probably do 15.
Okay.
Because that's a package in half.
Challenge accepted, Winter Red.
No.
And I will be judging this hot dog contest and recording it.
Okay, we're going to have you go back to Ike and see...
No, that's...
He will not do buns.
Well, I mean...
I think Lee could put away a lot more hot dogs than 15 hot dogs or whatever he said.
Yeah. Oh, I'll go to Costco, man.
No, but
I will go to Costco.
Those are huge.
Well, then we'll count them as 2.
I was thinking of just those little tiny, ballparks that you can get at packet. Okay. I'll talk to Lee. You talk to Ike. I'm not going to be involved in this because I really thought there was like buns involved too.
You sound like you want to be if it's bunless. I think we should do a bunless challenge.
No.
How much meat can you eat?
That sounds daunting. I really thought there was hot dog buns involved. That's why I limited myself to 5. Yeah, I think I could do 5 with the bun. Okay, we'll move on.
Let's dig into the kitchen drawer.
I got to talk about this week. And I'm really excited about it because I was baking this week and I discovered that I do have a very favorite measuring cup.
Oh, do tell.
And I'm talking liquid measuring cup.
Oh, yes, because you've talked about your other measuring cups before that are oval shaped.
Yes, which I totally love. Still love them. The thing that I wanted to talk about today is the OXO Good Grips 2-cup angled measuring cup.
Okay.
I found a cheap deal, I think, of a different set of measuring cups that are not this lovely side angledness. I just totally made up a word, everybody. Sorry about that.
Tell us about the side angled.
So I was
what
using
does that
these.
Mean?
Well, so I was using these other KitchenAid measuring cups, and they were a set of 3. They nest in each other. There's a really big one, and then medium and small. I was really super, super annoyed with them because of the fact that they don't have the side angled action. So the OXO one has where you pour something in and you don't have to bend down to look at the side of your measuring cup. You can just look straight down into it because they have the measuring on the inside painted in white. They have a white background so you can see exactly where each of the measures are without bending over, looking and measuring that way.
And it's angled.
Yep.
So it's angled on the inside.
On the inside.
You can see it.
It's really quite innovative, I think.
Yeah, so you can just look down and pour and you know exactly how much you've got.
On the outside and also on the inside where the angled portion is the measurements are in red lettering.
Oh, sure. So it stands out.
So that's good. Obviously, the stuff on the side is painted on and it's starting to chip because I have had this for a long time. But I will tell you this, that I never use the stuff on the side. Heck, they don't even need to have the stuff on the side. If the stuff on the angled inside, you can see it.
Yeah, and you can see that stays nice and new and doesn't chip.
The reason why is they painted the measurements first and then they painted some white paint over it so that the red lettering does not chip off from the angled part.
Under the paint. So.
Yeah, I'll put a link in the show notes. The other couple things I really like about it, Sharon, is that this is the Good Grips, part of their Good Grips line. And so it does have a really nice handle that it feels comfortable. And this is another dumb thing that I'm sure people are...
Makes a difference,
but I really like it. There is a spot for your thumb. If you have one of these, you know what I'm talking about. So you hold on to it and your thumb can kind of go up top. There's like a little shelf for your thumb. And I totally love that, just how it feels in the hand. It's a good user experience, in my personal opinion. And one last thing that I really like, and Sharon mentioned this when we were talking about it before we got on air, is that the handle is really long.
It's flush with the bottom of the measuring cup. The handle is.
Yeah, it's pretty stable. So I love this OXO Good Grips 2 angled measuring cup. And I would probably just stick with a couple more 2 cups.
Yeah, the 2 cup is a really great measure.
Anyway, that's my kitchen tool review for the week.
Oh, how many stars?
I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5 for the 2 cup. For the 2 cup.
Okay.
Just because I like it so much.
And now for the main course.
Okay, let's get to our main topic, which is blood and guts.
Okay.
We've got a disclaimer.
Disclaimer, you guys. We are going to talk about some stuff, blood and guts in cooking.
And food.
So if you are at all squeamish,
or if you're making dinner right now,
don't listen to this because you're going to get grossed out, I think. At least what I researched, Sharon.
But you should still listen.
I know, right? It won't be that bad. Okay, that is the disclaimer. You can tap out if you need to. You can go forward in the podcast and listen to our last part if you really want to. That'll be last, 5 minutes or something like that?
Yeah.
This is our Halloween episode.
Yeah, we were trying to decide what to do for Halloween. And we've talked about pumpkins. We've talked about some other things like Halloween candy.
Yep.
We decided to talk about gore, blood and guts.
And guts. I'm excited because this was fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, you've been warned.
All right.
Sharon, blood.
Cooking with blood is a tradition that dates back centuries.
I'm sure.
Thousands of years, in fact. Homer talked about it in the Odyssey.
Really?
Yes. It's a tradition that's based on both frugality,
Yes.
which I can't really say that word very well, and respect for the animal. And that's not wasting any part of the slaughter.
Right.
The most important byproduct of slaughter is, and we're talking about byproducts, I'm not talking about the most important element of slaughter, but the most important byproduct of the slaughter is the blood.
Is it because of the nutritional value? Is it because of, is it like highly prized?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Blood is rich in iron, vitamin D, and protein. It's been called liquid meat.
Liquid. I just want to say, she just said liquid meat, everybody. Liquid meat. Let that sink in.
That's right. The taste. So the flavor has been described as rich, surprising, dense with flavor.
Surprising. You can say that a lot of it.
Painfully good. That's a quote. Painfully good.
Okay.
And similar to lean meat.
Oh.
So, if you're watching what you eat, drink blood, kids. Don't do that. Don't do that, Bonnie. The most common bloods that are used in cooking are chicken, cow, duck, pig, goat, and venison.
Okay.
People talk about how even cow and like deer and elk blood have a little bit more of a gamey flavor than something like chicken or pig.
Really?
Yeah.
A gamey flavor, even in the blood.
Yeah. And it kind of depends on what the particular animal's diet has consisted of too, which, makes a lot of sense.
That totally makes sense.
Yeah. There's a lot of people out there that are using blood in their cooking. So we've got things that are popular around the world. Duck's blood soup in Poland. China has blood tofu.
Yeah.
France and American Cajuns have boudin. Philippines have pork blood stew. Scandinavia countries have blood pancakes, which are served with lingonberries.
No big deal.
That you can get at IKEA. So,
Yeah, get that. But not the blood pancakes. I don't think they serve those there.
Nope. You can't get those there. Blood curd is quite popular as an ingredient in soups and stews.
Oh.
That would be popular both in Korea and Vietnam. Tibet, congealed yak's blood is a traditional food. And then, of course, we have got the ever popular black pudding, which is popular in the UK, Ireland, Britain, and the Commonwealth. And then I thought this was interesting because it's on my list of things to make. Chicken blood is used as a thickener and for flavor intensification, kind of like bouillon would be used in the dish coq au vin.
Wait, so that would be at the end?
I'm not sure when it's used, but apparently that is a common practice, is using chicken blood in coq au vin.
Okay, you may be getting into this, but when I think of blood, it coagulates, right? And
it sure does, Winter.
It sure does. And so I'm like, okay.
Can you explain why blood coagulates?
Okay, well, let me just, because I'm confused a little on how, because I'm going to just say this right now. I have had blood in foods before. I've had, so if you know what congee is like a rice porridge. And I've had the version that I'm familiar with is called juk. It's basically the same thing as congee. I had like a blood version of that, and
it's used for flavor.
It was really good. Like I loved it. Loved that blood. Sorry, I had to say that. Anyway, blood congeals. Blood coagulates.
As it should.
Should.
When you or an animal has a wound to staunch the bleeding, your blood contains properties that will clot.
Yes.
To stop the bleeding.
We love those platelets. Big fan of those platelets and other things. So how does one, like if you were making your coq au vin with chicken's blood, how does one use that chicken? Like where are you getting that chicken's blood and how are you preventing it from congealing before you use it as a thickener? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to get into tips for using blood. In your cooking.
Okay. Should I have asked that question later?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
We're there.
We're there. Okay.
So today, if you're in especially the United States, as there's many cultures here in the United States who use blood in their cooking, but American cuisine, as we all know, is somewhat bland. If you're just like, hey, this is American style cooking.
Yeah.
It's pretty bland. We've talked about it today in the United States, it can be hard to find a good place to purchase blood. Your butcher should know how. Can probably wink, wink, nudge, nudge, get you some blood and get you some quality. Like if they sell quality meats, they should know a place where you can obtain quality blood.
Okay. I've never thought about that actually before. How does one get blood?
Yeah. So ask around and you might be able to find a shop that sells it to order.
Okay.
Because they won't just have it.
No.
Because it spoils so quickly.
Yes.
Blood contains bacteria and things like that. And bacteria love blood. They're very attracted to it, if you will. It will multiply quickly and spoil the blood. So they don't just keep it around. It's usually you can find somewhere that will get it to order. Some Asian markets will regularly carry fresh blood, but you do need to check around because that's not everywhere. And it's not because they're weird or anything like that, but butchers in Asian markets are sure sources of where to at least ask around.
It may not be common in America to use blood.
No, yeah.
As for food, but other cuisines it is.
Yeah. We're making things like the wedge salad. You know, it's so fancy and it's iceberg lettuce, people. There's no taste. So before you purchase any type of animal blood, though, you need to ask questions about how the animal was raised, where it comes from, the type of diet it had. Think Portlandia, the episode where they go and out to eat. And I think they go and get chicken.
Yes.
And the chicken has a name.
Yeah.
And so they're like, oh, okay, well, if this is farm raised, free range. And then they asked if the chicken had friends, right? Like you should know that much about this animal if you're going to purchase the blood.
I'm going to post a link to the show notes for that one because it's on Netflix and it's on season 1, I think. So
that's pretty awesome. The key is ensuring that the animal was very healthy.
Yes.
You don't want it to have died from natural causes or something. Blood-borne illnesses and disease can be a problem that even proper cooking temperatures and techniques can't get rid of.
Yikes.
Okay.
This feels a little dangerous to me.
It can be.
It can be.
Can be. So things to know, blood spoils quickly and easily attracts bacteria. So be sure to only buy fresh blood and use it the same day.
Okay, when we're talking fresh blood, like I got it from the animal that day, ? Or like the day before, ? Do you know time frames?
I'm not slaughtering. Just if you buy blood, you use it the same day.
You're going to use that. Okay.
Yeah. Don't buy blood maybe in the evening unless you're a vampire. I don't know. Unless you're going to stay up all night and cook it. Eat any cooked blood dishes immediately or freeze them by the second day.
Whoa.
If the butcher or your blood guy,
your blood distributor,
yes, doesn't add an anticoagulant in the shop to the blood, then you can add nature's warfarin, which is vinegar.
Oh.
Vinegar is an anticoagulant.
How much vinegar do you add to it?
You could use a red wine vinegar.
Oh.
With a ratio of 1 cup to every 6 cups of blood.
Okay. That's going to change the flavor, man, I think.
This keeps the blood from thickening and clotting. This particular blog on chef2chef.net recommends red wine vinegar. I think that's because it's commonly used in meat dishes and goes well with meat.
Yeah.
You could possibly use white vinegar because it's a little bit more neutral, less flavor, but you are still getting vinegar.
Okay.
Mixing fresh blood with vinegar is a safe way to prolong the freshness. Freezing coagulated blood breaks down the bonds, and so when it's thawed, the blood will separate and spoil.
Oh.
Pretty immediately.
That's a bummer.
Yeah.
Actually, I was like, oh.
So pig's blood is said to be the most common and easiest to obtain, but things like duck, deer, elk, some cow can have a unique flavor because of the different amount of iron that's in their blood and the nutrients that the blood can contain, just depending on that animal's diet. Have you heard of the Nordic Food Lab?
No, I haven't. What is that?
So back in 2008, there's a renowned Danish chef named René Redzepi and restaurateur Klaus Meyer They're now known to foodies around the world because they're the masterminds of the 4-time winner of World's Best Restaurant called Noma. Yep.
Lee's talked about Noma before.
They opened a test kitchen in Copenhagen, in Denmark, called the Nordic Food Lab. And it was a space for chefs to experiment with new, creative, and maybe even taboo ingredients. And then they come out with reports on how it went. They've worked with fermented grasshoppers, pheasant essence, and even beaver anal glands.
Oh, beaver anal glands are used quite often in the perfume industry, actually, in cosmetic industry.
Imitation vanilla.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. That's where
beaver anal glands, people. Listen to Good Job Brain. That's a great podcast. I love talking about beaver anal glands.
But the report that they've created that issued a lot of attention and a little bit of frustration and ew is the one that they did on how to substitute blood for eggs.
Okay. Did it work?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, eggs create a little bit more air. So things that they baked with and things like that, they did like cookies with blood and cookies with eggs.
Yeah. And
the eggs did rise like millimeters more than the blood did, but the blood still worked out. Like that worked out.
I'm assuming it changed the color of your cookie.
Sure. But if you're making red velvet, who knows? It's a natural dye.
But it doesn't go red. It doesn't go red. It goes kind of brownish, like when it gets oxidized. And when it cooks, I bet that's pretty red. I mean, Sharon's showing me a picture and I was like, that's pretty red. It's kind of a pinkish
looks
red.
Like a fondant.
Yeah, it looks really.
I think it depends on what you're making.
Yeah.
So I read this interview with somebody from the food lab and they asked like, how did you get started with blood at the food lab? The project was to create traditional Arctic snacks.
Okay.
Because they're in Copenhagen, Scandinavia, roughly. But it's really difficult to get those traditional Arctic snacks to be tasty because a lot of those traditional recipes weren't really meant to be tasty. They were meant to sustain.
Be nutritious.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of times there's seal fat that's included in that recipe. And apparently that's not very tasty seal fat.
Oh.
That led to a discussion about why there's so few blood products on shelves. So they decided to order 6 liters of blood and start experimenting and see what kinds of new directions they could take things in. They started out with traditional things like the pancakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the lingonberries. But then they moved on to other things. They did some baking with it. They did some blood sausage and things. They ended up with a blood sausage dessert. There's an Italian dish that's kind of seen as a dessert that's more of a blood sausage. And when you cut into it, you get raisins and pine nuts, and it looks really dark and chocolatey almost because it gets that super dark consistency that you were just talking about, the oxidization and all that kind of stuff. And you could almost mistake it for like a praline or a truffle.
Interesting.
But it's actually a blood sausage and it's regarded as a treat.
Huh.
A lot of people are afraid that blood's going to have a very strong, harsh, and metallic taste because you've probably tasted your own blood at some point or another if you've ever had a bloody nose.
Right.
So the food lab said that the representative from the Nordic Food Lab said that kind of depends on the dish and the person tasting it. In Northern European cuisine, you have a lot of blood sausage, but that also includes a lot of spices like marjoram. In Southern cuisine, like India and Southeast Asia and things like that, they're using more cinnamon and cloves. The Nordic Food Lab got great results with woodruff cloves, roasted koji, and other flavor components. Things
that would work well with the blood.
Things like coffee and cocoa are really good at masking any metallic tastes.
Okay.
But it kind of depends on what you're used to eating, what your palate's like. Again, the diet of the animal whose blood you're consuming. So it depends on how heavily spiced the dish is. And there's a lot of components that go into how is it going to taste.
Well, I mean, like with any meat product, I'm going to say that as a meat product, like it really depends on the spices and seasonings that you have that will bring out a flavor that meat to be what it is. And when we went to Iceland, we had whale because we wanted to try whale. And one place we had whale, it was like a very fishy, but then another place actually did something different to it. And it was a really well seasoned steak. Like it wasn't fishy at all. So, I mean, it really depends, right? I mean,
preparation depends.
Exactly. On your seasonings and your spices.
One thing that they made that I thought that was super interesting was ice cream.
How did they do that?
I know. So she said with the ice cream, you can eat quite a lot before you realized, oh, okay, this has a metallic taste. It has blood in it.
Different.
And that surprised a lot of their tasters.
Oh.
That they couldn't quite tell that there was blood in that ice cream.
Well, I mean, high protein content.
Yeah. And so the ice cream kind of veered them more towards substituting eggs.
Right.
Blood for the eggs. And so they did things like bread and muffins and the ice cream. And she said that the ice cream was one of her favorite successes.
Interesting.
They did sponge cake, pancakes. They did meringues, which were mostly just blood and sugar. And
which is basically what meringues are, is eggs and sugar, right?
Eggs and sugar. So they did blood and sugar. And so these are some of the same proteins in blood that are in eggs. And so like some of that same amino acids and things like that. And so it kind of worked. Not the exact same, but it kind of worked.
Interesting.
The connection between the blood and the egg is that the similar protein compositions and content, it's about 55 grams within the serum in a serving of blood and about 60 in an egg.
Oh.
Yeah. And the most astonishing thing is that they both have albumin.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that really translates into how it cooks up. In short, the Nordic Food Lab promoted this egg substitution with blood because of the high amount of allergies related to eggs that have been going around.
Oh.
So that's one of their strongest arguments for it. I saw a lot of cool things like cocktails with blood.
Okay. I don't drink, but I just can imagine not wanting to like chew your, do you know what I'm saying?
You don't want to chew your drink.
Yeah,
No,
I don't think I want to chew my drink.
Well, you use a sieve.
Ew.
Yep. You strain it.
No.
Basically, instead of a White Russian, it's a Red Russian.
I don't know what a White Russian is.
Cocktail. Yeah.
Okay. Yikes.
Yick.
There's a lot of blood out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of blood out there. We've all got it. Do you want to drink it or eat it? Let us know.
Chew your drink.
Let us know if you want to chew your drink.
No.
You can email us at hungrysquared@gmail.com.
No. Don't tell us about that. I don't want to know about that. I checked the inbox.
Okay, Winder, tell us about guts.
Guts. Okay, Sharon, you have heard the term offal before. Offal.
OFAL?
OFFAL.
FF.
Yep. They are also termed as variety meats, pluck, or organ meats. Those are other names. Pluck. Yes.
Like you pluck a chicken?
Well, the same word, but it's pluck is also refers to organ meats. And these are the internal organs or entrails of a butchered animal. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
There's not really a specific definition of which organs are edible and used. And it all really just depends on the region, the country, the culture that use the variety meats. The variety meats, right? So I get to talk about guts, and because of that, there are all types of offal that are out there, and you have probably heard of them. And so we'll talk a little bit about how we've used them in the United States and then maybe other places. But you have heard of other dishes like foie gras.
Oh, yes.
Pate. Mm-hmm. So foie gras is a fatty duck liver. Apparently, it's quite delicious. It's not allowed in the United States, if I'm not mistaken, anymore. Pate is a liver-based creamy product. And sweetbreads. Are you familiar with sweetbreads at all?
Yeah, I think you and I have had sweetbreads before.
When did we have sweetbreads?
We went to the Copper Onion with our friend Amy.
So it's not a bread.
It's not a cinnamon roll.
It's not a cinnamon roll. It's actually the name for the thymus gland or the pancreas of, it's usually a calf or a lamb sometimes it's beef or pork, but more of the younger animals, I guess.
Young guts.
Yeah. And it is very rich in flavor, I would say.
I think they were fried.
A lot of times
when we had them. Very yummy.
They a lot of times, because of the fact that they usually are soaked in salt water, then poached in milk, and then they can be obviously fried up and stuff like that. In general, that is what some of the guts are. So offal is this very generic term. So I wanted to talk a little bit about something I found very fascinating. In many other countries, all the internal organs are used, right, Sharon?
Right. The U.S. has had like a big, I think they call it snout to tail movement.
Yes.
Where, you use the blood and you use every part of the animal. That has been, the trend has come back to be more frugal with it and to really get into it.
Yes. In the past, it has not been that way.
Not in America.
Not in America.
All other countries, I think it has been. But again, America is very bland and we're like, ew, that's icky. Because it's not white bread.
Just a very different take on it. So let's go back in time, Sharon.
Okay.
To 1943. At that time, we just joined the World War II. And former President Herbert Hoover started chatting up the United States about the American meat supply. And he was really trying to get it into the Americans' mind of where we were headed. Because obviously we were doing rationing at that time. Meat and cheese you couldn't get it.
Right. You had to have coupons for things. Those coupons ran out and you didn't get any more sometimes. Victory gardens were a big thing.
Exactly. And he stated in this particular magazine, meats and fats are just as much munitions in this war as tanks and airplanes. Food will win that war. The problem will loom larger and larger in the United States as the war goes on. Ships are too scarce to carry much of such supplies from the Southern Hemisphere. Our farms are short of labor to care for livestock. And on top of it, we all must furnish supplies to the British and the Russians. We should not wait for official rationing to begin to conserve. The same spirit in the household that we had in the last war can solve this problem. Just a couple months after he put that out there, they actually started rationing beef and pork, and all of that was shipped overseas to the troops. If you think about it, at that time, they really loved red meat. Beef households, that was a pretty common thing to have. It was part of a quote unquote a proper meal. And so when this rationing started happening, that was really detrimental to what was being made and maybe morale at home, I would say. Just as a side note, because of this rationing stuff of beef, and a huge black market showed up for meat.
Oh, wow.
There's like these smaller slaughterhouses that they were overlooked by the office that was in charge of rations. And so, yeah, there were ways of getting around it. I thought that was fascinating. But because of the fact that meat was being rationed, they needed to figure out a way to have other protein options, because they were thinking that, the war is going to go on for many years. So they were trying to figure out a way to get people to change their meat eating habits. So in 1940, the Department of Defense and the National Research Council, they actually assembled a team of the country's leading social scientists and anthropologists to create, and they created this committee on food habits. And they had basically two missions. They needed to launch an in-depth study of America's eating habits. Who was in the household was deciding what made a meal, what was the ideal balance of familiarity and versus novelty. And then the other thing is that once we understand kind of the background of what's happening in the household, what factors can be used to influence how food was consumed that would benefit the war effort.
Okay.
So there are papers, tons and tons of research.
That's cool.
That was done by this committee to see what would work. And the head of this committee was a woman. She's an anthropologist named Margaret Mead. And I think we talked about her in a previous episode about the Victory Gardens. And I think
she's amazing.
Yeah, she's all very involved. Even school lunch, I think she was a huge part of that. So, and then also a German-born psychologist. His name was Kurt Lewin. And he's considered the founder of social psychology. So they were given the task of figuring out what to do with the looming meat shortage. They knew it's coming. What are we going to do? They're basically asking America to not eat their steaks, their pork chops, those cuts of meats that they're familiar with and they love. And so they want to encourage people to start eating hearts, livers, and other organ meats instead, so as to help the war effort out. And obviously the reason why they had to do this was because organ meats were looked down upon. They were looked down upon as being food for people in the rural areas, people that were poor, that were unsophisticated. So there was a social taboo against eating organ meats. And so they did all of these research projects trying to figure out a way to get organ meats to show up on people's radar. They figured out after all of this research is that instead of like using patriotism as an incentive to eat organ meats, because that's just, they're stubborn. We're stubborn, right? Yeah. They felt like the way to go for them was actually to focus on the barriers over the incentives of like, oh, you're a patriot. So the question at hand wasn't what would convince you to eat organ meats, but rather, why don't you eat them in the first place? So one of the reasons why people don't in the United States was not eat organ meats was because they were just unfamiliar with it. There were no cookbooks out there featuring how to prepare organ meats, right?
Yeah, the cookbooks that were available at the time were, I like going through antique bookshops and stuff like that and looking at cookbooks. They're very limited.
Oh, super limited.
In the instructions on how to do it. So if you didn't grow up with organ meat as something that you regularly prepared, the information available was not extensive on how to prepare it.
And so that unfamiliarity was scary to people. It always is, right? Just anything. So their approach was like, they didn't just say, hey, look, you need to eat beef brains every day. They didn't do that.
Well, that's probably a good thing.
Yes.
They didn't.
So, and there was actually a paper that was written by Brian Wansink. He's a professor of consumer behavior at Cornell University. In this paper, it's called Changing Eating Habits on the Home Front, Lost Lessons from World War II Research. He talks about that instead of asking people to just go straight out and eat beef brains, right? They just said, let's ask people to occasionally try an organ meat. Insert organ meat into your meal planning, just like 1 day a week kind of a thing. Just try it for variety's sake. They're kind of twisting it that way, like, oh yeah, I should try that. That would be really good. Not replace it altogether in their brain. So it's a way of just taking a baby step in that direction. So variety meats, that's how they get it. Adding variety to your meat. And there was an article even in Life in 1943, once again, trying to get this idea of like, okay, this is showing up. They said they are good, abundant, and highly nutritious. And it says for no good reason, most Americans wrinkle their noses at the idea of any of the functional organs of otherwise edible animals. Yet tripe, kidneys, tongue, heart, liver, and the other variety meats shown on the following pages are not only rich in nutritive value, but when properly prepared are among the tastiest dishes known. Things started to pop up to help with that. So yeah, that's when publishers started creating cookbooks for variety meats. They had community classes showing you how to cook variety meats. And it started to become a little bit less of a stigma to eat organ meats. And eventually organ meats are what the patriots ate, not necessarily what the poor people ate. So that they changed that just by slipping it in. Now, the tricky thing is that it's propaganda, right? I mean, it was all propaganda for the war during the war times. So after the war ended, those didn't really stick. Those variety meats still didn't stick because everybody loves their steaks and their chops and their, those high-end cuts of meat. And so, and they were available again. So obviously people went back to those things. There were some conceptual implications that they found in the research was that they really had to be, with their marketing campaigns and propaganda, was restructure social norms. So instead of it being a poor person's food, it was patriotic to eat organ meats.
It was everyone's food.
Yep, exactly. And then they obviously had to change perceptions of the taste of those organ meats. So obviously with these new cookbooks and these cooking classes and stuff like that, if it was prepared well, then it would be very tasty. And eventually people would assimilate to these unfamiliar foods. This was a very fascinating paper, random, but super fascinating. So
I'm glad you found it.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
It was fascinating. So I'll post a link in the show notes if you'd like to read that. I wanted to touch on tripe really fast. Do you know what tripe is, Sharon?
Stomach lining, I believe.
Yeah, it's basically stomach lining. And I have eaten tripe a lot, so I don't think that's really odd. I just want to point out a few things about tripe. I did not realize this because I've eaten certain types of tripe, not realizing that there are many types of tripe.
Well, Let's talk about that.
So tripe is the name commonly used for stomach tissue of ruminant animals. And ruminant, when I say that, is those are the types of animals that they're mammals, but they are plant-based. And they have to ferment the stuff, the cud that they chew on, and regurgitate that, like chew it up, regurgitate it, hangs out in this specialized stomach.
Like a cow who has the multiple stomachs.
Exactly. So cows, they call them even-toed animals. So cows, sheep, giraffes are technically ruminant animals.
Oh.
Did you know that? I was like,
no, okay.
Who knew? Yaks, sheep, goats, that type of thing. So they have these different types of stomachs. Now, cows, for example, have probably eaten quite a bit of cow tripe because they have 4 different stomachs. Their first stomach is called the rumen or the blanket tripe. So it looks like a blanket. It really does.
Oh,
it's kind of soft and rich. There's a lot of villi. And then the second one is reticulum or the honeycomb tripe. I am sure you've seen that.
Yes, I have.
At the grocery store. And I think that's the one that shows up most. There's a third stomach, which is the omasum. And it's also called the Bible book or seam type. Not as commonly used. I don't think it's easy to handle. Doesn't really have good structure and stuff. The reason why people use the honeycomb tripe is because it kind of holds up its structure and it holds sauce too, if you think about it.
Okay. Get some good sauce with that.
You got to get some good sauce with that.
It'll be good.
And then the fourth type is the obamasum, and it's called the reed tripe. And very rarely is it used because it's kind of more of a glandular tripe. And so it's not as good. And tripe is usually, I didn't realize this, but it's cleaned out before it's used and bleached and then par cooked before it shows up at the butcher's.
Bleached with like Clorox?
I don't know exactly what. I'm sure that there's something similar. I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
So, but it is processed before you even get it. I've eaten it a lot. My dad would cook with it a lot. It's just the way we ate because it was it was not looked down upon, because I really do think that stomach can be looked down upon. Now, one place that stomach is not looked down upon, and in fact is quite, let's see, how would you say it, is highly priced, is with the dish haggis.
Oh, yeah.
Sharon, are you familiar with haggis?
Yes, I've had it.
Have you?
Mm-hmm.
I have not had haggis before. So what is haggis? Haggis is Scottish's national dish. I did not know that, but I kind of doesn't surprise me.
Scotland.
So what you're doing is you're getting the sheep's innards and you're mixing it up with oatmeal and spices and suet, and it's all wrapped up in the sheep's stomach. And the sheep only has one stomach. It's considered either a bag or a paunch, or there's a couple of other names, while the cow has 4 different stomachs. And so that's called tripe. So obviously it's one of those ones that is often talked about and made fun of. Wouldn't you say? Like, yeah. It's kind of...
It does have quite the smell. It's got quite the smell.
The smell. Okay. Well, I have not had it before.
It's strong. It's extremely strong.
They're not totally sure where it comes from. There's a lot of different possibilities that it could have. They think that maybe it could be from France, because there's a French term, hatcher, which means to chop up or mangle. And then actually they do mention something in the Odyssey. I didn't know about the blood, but they do mention having something stuffed in a stomach and over the fire, that type of thing. And then there's a food historian, Clarissa Dixon Wright. She talks about haggis coming from Scandinavia. So when you started talking about Noma, I was like, oh, this is fascinating. So why was it kind of made fun of? Just a little bit of history. So it was considered a peasant food. You are basically encasing hard to cook cuts of lung, intestines, and any kind of cut off parts, the undesirable muscle meats, liver and kidney, and sticking it in a very convenient packaging of the sheep's stomach.
Just stuff it in a sack and cook it.
Basically, that's what they happened to do. It was considered, like I said, a poor man's food back in the day, until Robert Burns, the beloved poet, in 1787, wrote his great ode called Address to a Haggis.
Oh.
Yes. In fact, he talks about it being the great chieftain o' the puddin' race.
He was a Scottish poet, wasn't he?
Yeah. And he really went out and just made it sound amazing. So to this day, after he passed away on January 25th, which is his birthday, they have a tradition called Burns Supper. And at that time, during the supper, they have Scottish food, including the haggis, Scotch whiskey. It's a to-do. Like, there's
I'd go.
Yeah, I would totally go to a burn supper. So if anybody wants to invite me to one, that would be cool. Did you know that haggis was banned from being imported to the United States in 1971?
Oh, it was 71. I thought it was mid 70s,
Yeah.
but I don't remember why it was banned.
So the reason why it was banned was because at that time in the probably late 60s, 70s, there was an emergence of something called scrapie in sheep and other cattle. And scrapie, and that's spelled SCRAPIE, it's a disease of sheep and some of those other cattle that attacked their central nervous system. It's very similar to what happened with like the mad cow disease.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
It's like an encephalopathy that attacked these animals. And so they're like, well, you're putting sheep lung in that. We do not want to have any of that in the United States. And that was banned in 1971. Same thing happened in the 1990s when beef from the EU was banned, right? Because of the mad cow disease or bovine spongiform encephalopathy. That one was actually lifted in, I think, 2014. But still, haggis is banned here from being imported. Now, Sharon, you've had haggis.
Yeah, I think they snuck it in.
They snuck it in, and because you're taking it upon yourself.
I had it at a church social.
You did?
Yeah.
What?
I think they snuck it in.
Oh, dude.
Like somebody had gone out of the U.S.
Now, tell me, what did you think about it?
It was not tasty. I had like a little, I don't know, wasn't really like a slice, a piece. I don't know.
Yeah.
The scent was extremely strong.
What did they cook it in?
I don't know how it was prepared. I didn't watch that. Like it was, hey, I've got some haggis.
You got to try this.
Yeah. Of course we did because So I Married an Axe Murderer was popular at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to say that I had had haggis and I did not care for it. Although, you know, I was a teenager at the time. I was a youngin'. So if I had it today, I might have a different opinion or I don't know. You know, I would try it again.
I think it depends on how it's prepared with many things, right?
Right.
We might have to find a place that serves haggis that makes their own in the United States.
Yeah.
So
if you're going to smuggle it in.
Do we want to try that?
I'd try it. I'd try it.
My sister-in-law, Jenny. Hey, Jenny. She told me about a time when she was in the UK. She was on an exchange and she went to this, I can't remember where they were at. I think they were at a bed and breakfast or something. And they served up some eggs and it looked like sausage to her.
Yeah.
And she was like, this is the best. This is so delicious. This is the best sausage I've ever had. She asked what it was and they told her it was haggis. And
interesting.
And then she was very repulsed after that because of that, how difficult it is for people to wrap their minds around eating
what it is.
Exactly what it is and eating entrails / blood and guts, you know, that type of thing. So
you tricked me. This is tasty.
Yeah. And
I'm so mad.
I know. It just is so funny because in discussing blood and guts, it really does have a lot to do with how you prepare it.
It does. I mean, you don't want to just eat blood and guts.
No.
Have you had any unique organ meats?
Just the basics.
Just the basics?
Liver, stomach. Not had haggis before. I have had, I mean, if we're not talking entrails per se, but I have eaten cow brain before.
What? Where?
There used to be a restaurant called Bill and Nada's or Nada's. I'm not sure how it's.
Oh, Bill and Nada's.
Bill and Nada's Diner, right?
Yeah, down here in Salt Lake.
In Salt Lake, kind of between the downtown and the university.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, why shouldn't I try this eggs and brain dish?
It's on their menu.
It was on their menu. This is before the mad cow disease situation, people. So, because that was banned when that did happen. And I thought it was not bad. I thought it was actually pretty good. The texture of the brain was a little spongier than, like it was a little too soft to be quote unquote sausage, you know, but it was pretty good. How about you? Have you had any weirdness?
I've been there.
Have you?
And I've
not had it.
I've not had it, but I've been with somebody who had the brains and eggs. Brain and eggs. I don't know. That used to be the late night diner to go to.
It was. Yeah.
It closed when supposedly the rumor has it that Nada killed Bill.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Are you serious?
It's no longer there. They
No, it's
bulldozed it, and
Yeah.
I think it's like a quick loan check cashing place or something,
Yeah,
or a gas station or something. I don't know.
had no idea.
Yeah. I don't know. That was just the rumor. That could be like a horribly untrue rumor. So don't quote me. I mean, quote me to say that I don't know. But that was what the rumor was.
Blood and guts, everybody.
There you go.
There you go. Introducing interesting ingredients. Yeah. Sharon, what do you got to talk to me about?
You're going to laugh. When I say you're going to laugh, you're going to laugh.
Let's hear it.
Ketchup. Ketchup is our interesting ingredient.
Sharon, what?
I'm serious when I say it's ketchup. So we subscribe to New York Times right now, but I saw this thing that Mark Bittman had a recipe for. And if you don't know who Mark Bittman is, he's at the New York Times cooking. We've got a few cookbooks by Mark Bittman.
Okay.
It's like how to make everything
fast,
how to make everything vegetarian.
Yes, I know who you're talking about.
These how to make everything cookbooks, and they're really thick.
And they're
packed full of
really good information.
Yeah. Packed full of knowledge. It's awesome. Anyway, he posted a recipe. It's an easy, quote unquote, beginner easy recipe for stir-fried chicken with ketchup.
What are you talking about?
Because this is blood themed and this looks a little bit like blood
without
eating blood in your home.
What are you talking about? Ketchup?
Yeah.
I mean, I know sweet and sour sauce can be made with some ketchup situation, but what?
Yeah. So before you turn your nose up, think how good ketchup can taste. In this version, it was cauliflower that was tossed in a slurry of cornstarch and egg and then deep fried. The crust was exquisite and the cauliflower perfectly cooked. But it's what happened next that he, who is an Indian chef in New York, Sharon, really got my attention. He finished the cauliflower in a sauce made in about 3 minutes, containing nothing more than ketchup, garlic, and cayenne pepper. And if you look at the picture of it,
okay,
it's bright reddish. It looks a little like blood, so I'm sticking with the theme, but we're doing ketchup.
Ketchup with, what was it again? Garlic? Crushed garlic? Are we talking crushed garlic?
We are talking 2 tablespoons slivered garlic, cayenne pepper, and just a little bit, 1/4 teaspoon.
Did they warm that up and stuff like that? Or just toss it?
Yeah, you're warming it up. You're cooking until the ketchup bubbles, and so you're reducing it a little bit. So it bubbles and it will darken. So essentially it's cooking down just a tad.
I'm going to try
ketchup
this.
already has like water and things like that in there. Ketchup itself, like it's one of those things that it's an ingredient, but it's also a combination of many ingredients.
Oh yeah. You can make your own ketchup, obviously.
Yeah.
We've talked about that before. You've made a good paleo. Is it paleo?
Yep.
Version? And it was really pretty tasty, but that seems silly, that recipe. Sharon, ketchup.
Yeah.
That's your interesting ingredient today.
That's my interesting ingredient, and I'm sticking to it. And we're going to put this article from Mark Bittman in the show notes.
Okay. Because it was a ketchup?
Stir-fried chicken with ketchup.
Okay. I'm going to try it, you guys. I'm going to try that, actually. I want to try it. Because we used ketchup a lot when we had our Chinese restaurant when I was a kid. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. This will be familiar.
Will it?
Or it'll be, ew.
Ew.
Okay, thanks for joining us today for our show. You can find us at hungrysquared.com, on Apple Podcasts, on Stitcher, on Google Play Music, and Spotify.
Did you guys like our Blood and Guts episode? If you did, send us an email at hungrysquared@gmail.com. Jeez, I am like... And follow us on Facebook and Instagram, because we are always doing stuff there. And we love you guys. Have we told you that lately? We love you. Happy Halloween. I hope you have a safe and happy Halloween. And we will see you next week for our next episode of Food Nerdery.
Okay, we really do love you. Bye.
Bye.
Hungry Squared, yeah, Hungry Squared.